ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Okay then, this had to be the best qualifying of the year, and it was. We're in the city of the most glamorous people, cars, locations, the Grand Prix. Of course, we had to get some headlines, and the big headline is that Lando Norris is back as a pole sitter after one of the most entertaining qualifying sessions you will ever find anywhere, with McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull Racing also in the mix at a point of time. But the way it's ended up, you wouldn't believe it. Lando taking pole in the crucial moment, Kunal. And this is what we love Monaco for. The qualifying, the technicality on display, the risk-taking on display. And at the end, different approaches and car philosophies battling with each other at the most technical circuit. And McLaren's run plan, that seemed to work out really well. The belief that they showed.
Everything. I mean, to me, it was, like y'all said, Monaco is special. You have to consume Monaco differently. And this is what it was. Qualifying was all about understanding everything that was at play, why the medium tire came into play. And Lando Norris being back on pole is actually a fantastic statement for Formula One. It's a fantastic statement for McLaren themselves. But more crucially, Soumil, it's a brilliant statement for what Lando Norris has been up to, trying to get back into that position. His first pole was actually at the Australian Grand Prix at the start of the season. We all know how things have turned out after that, how he's been working so hard to settle in the car, to sort of find his rhythm back in the McLaren, and get back into what we know as, would be dominating ways. Because guess which driver we thought would dominate the season? Lando Norris. But it's not.
And you're right, Lando Norris normally performs very well when he's qualified at the top of the grid. His last three big wins, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, Australia, they've all come from positions where Lando's commanded the grid. He's been the one at the top. And then he's able to control things the way he wants to. And his pole to win record is not as glamorous as Max's. It's a respectable 36. The greats like Lewis Michael, they had 56 and something. Max, he's even higher. It's insane what he does. But in that case, Lando is building up on that record. And we have seen this, Kunal. We should keep this an account for tomorrow, because for the first time we have a different rule about pit stops. McLaren do have an advantage in terms of having two cars in the top three. And even though it got scrappy for Oscar, I do believe that's a very valuable performance given the situation of the race.
It is. And, scrappy for Oscar is still a top three. He continues to be the only driver to be in the top four at every Grand Prix this season. In qualifying, he continues to be scoring points. Even on a bad race weekend, he finishes on the podium like he did last race as well. And I think that's what's needed for a championship season. Yes, we are used to seeing Max Verstappen win everything en route to a world championship. But, back in the 80s, drivers winning one race, but just staying on the podium, staying consistent, would still win a world championship even by half a point. So Oscar Piastri being where he is great. And you spoke about Piastri being third. Let's just dive into the race strategy, because that is what every single driver is saying. It's going to be chaotic. There's going to be pandemonium. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Let's think of some fun scenarios, because the fun scenarios I'm thinking of is, somebody like a Colapinto who's 20th. He's probably just going to start on the soft, see if he can do something, pit at the end of lap one, pick on the medium, go for as long as he can till he, gets a safety car or something or the other happens, because there's a 43% chance of a safety car, a 30% chance of a red flag, and then just get onto, the hard tire, which does go on for the entire race. A C4 hard tire, Soumil has shown almost no degradation. Okay. Which means that there are fun things possible. What's your most weird scenario? What do you think is going to happen? You've watched so many races. You've commentated on thousands of hours of motorsport. What's the weird thing that could happen?
Wow. Okay. uh, I think it's going to be two stoppers confusing everyone and catching out a lot of drivers. Because what you've mentioned was the ideal for Monaco until last year when we had a one stopper. So you bolt on a different set of tires, hope for the best, do a monster first stint, and then see where where your life takes you. But then here, there's two scenarios. It could be one normal pit stop, and then the second time, I fear that a lot of small teams might trigger the bigger teams to overthink it and also make extra pit stops. I'm not saying all of them, but someone who's got nothing to lose might just buy in. For instance, if at a crucial point, a smaller team boxes earlier and is able to extract a lot more pace from hypothetically a softer compound of tires, maybe banking on mediums and then hards in the pit stop, for all you know, a bigger team like Red Bull with Max might just have to be like, oh, okay. I mean, if this is not working, if we can't pass, let's benefit from the volatility. Let's try something different. So it might really spin this race into something so chaotic, Kunal, which is why I'd love to know your early prediction for this race. Because in some sense of the way, I think you can still navigate all of it by being the pole sitter, which Lando has done to his advantage. But there's still a lot at play. And there's no guarantee that the McLarens might even be the top three.
Okay. By the way, you've not answered what's going to be the most weird thing that could happen. You're a very, very shrewd commentator. You're just keeping your cards to yourself. Maybe on Fan Code, the Hindi broadcast that you do with Chetan Narula. That's where you'll speak about it. Who knows? But I'll tell you, I'm going to go back to what my weird scenario I think could be. Imagine there's a safety car, which there is a high chance of.
Yeah.
And imagine it's a long safety car. Could it be that the safer margin would be that you start on the medium tire, because at least you can, you know,
Yeah.
you can go till whenever there's a safety car. Because if you're on the hard and you just lose the hard, not only are you losing pace to the front, you're also creating a gap for the others to pit into, which is not good. So the safer option could just be start on the medium. And guess what happens? There's a safety car, right? And you think that it's going to be a longer safety car because it's Monaco. It generally takes a couple of laps. So what do? You dive into the pits, you take on the soft. Okay. Then you go out and then you dive back into the pits immediately and then you take on the hard and you go till the end of the race. I think that's a scenario that could very well happen.
You're right.
And if that happens, it actually then just becomes a medium hard or a hard medium race or whatever you sort of call it, because people will want to wait for the safety car. Okay. Teams will decide whether, in the wanting to wait for a safety car, will they sort of start on the medium or the soft. And I think most people will do the medium, because I think it's also the other way. Teams know that these hacks are possible. They also know that if at all something like this happens, they just rule out on flummoxing or fooling or putting their rivals who are ahead in faster cars on different strategies. So they might just even tell their drivers, please do not be the ones that cause the safety car, because there is so much to lose for teams that are not in the top 10.
And we've seen this historically at Monaco too. The leaders will not box unless there is a clear disadvantage of being on the current tires. They will stretch it out to the max. And we saw this in Formula 2 this morning as well, when Arvid Lindblad, when he got a penalty, his instant reaction was to back up the whole pack so that if they would back up, they'd have to make gaps to keep their cars warm. That's one of the factors. And then eventually he could squeeze in his 10-second penalty and not have that big of an impact. There could be teams doing that with their pit stop cycles as well, like noticing where their window could be, trying to fit in there. And normally you'd have to do that once in Monaco. Here there's a potential that you would have to do it twice. And what if the cars that box earlier benefit, because then they get a free pit stop, the others have already boxed or something like that, and you could see the whole pack jumbled up at a circuit like Monaco. What if that happens twice? It's a possibility. You roll of the dice.
And at least in the first stint, Soumil, if we look at the top 10, the 7 teams made it to top 10. Ocon is there, Hadjar is there, Albon is there, Lawson made it. Congratulations, first Q3
Yes.
2025. But Hadjar being 6th and Verstappen being 5th could that be where somewhat of a gap shows up? The top five runs away with it, and the Racing Bulls, where understandably has a bit of a gap to the top five. Maybe that could be one of those scenarios where
Well,
he just ends up naturally giving a gap to people. And there's Fernando Alonso in there. Maybe Fernando Alonso just decides, you know what, I'm going to safeguard my position. I'm going to drive as slow as I can go. Let the others go ahead. I mean, wow, I can't tell you, Soumil, how excited I am about this, because
same.
for once, there isn't a standard strategy. Because what would the standard strategy be? You start on the medium,
Yeah.
okay, like you said. What Leclerc did last year, he kept driving so slow that everyone bunched up behind him. Nobody had a gap, and then when he needed to pit, he picked up the pace, created his own little gap, pitted, and then sort of won the race from there. Of course, that's also more difficult said than otherwise. But can you imagine two stoppers, two drivers, McLaren there, Ferrari there, and both teams who haven't really been as sharp on the pit wall, I would say so, will be under so much pressure that they need to make the right call, not just once in Monaco, twice. And Lando Norris actually said this in the post race conference. He said, I understand why they put this rule. It's for the show, but I really wish that it wasn't the rule for me, because for me as a driver, I know what it could mean. Because Leclerc said this, like you said, drivers from the back of the grid could very well put the drivers in the front of the grid under pressure, just because of the unique situation that's there. And typical Monaco, Sommel, would have been you and I talking about the overcut and the undercut, but that's clearly not the talking point.
I mean, it could well be. It could trigger it, but where is the first layer? When does it happen? Because we don't have an expected tire window. Sure, some people could box as early as lap one. Some people might ditch it later, and we don't really have an exact understanding of when the peak performance from the softs comes in. And let's throw in something to complicate it. In qualifying, the softs didn't really produce their best lap on lap one. They came in 4 or 5 laps later after lots of warming up. And after that, they got really squirmy and it didn't really work out. And Oscar's best lap also worked out very well. And same with Lando, because of the build up and preparation. McLaren believed that if they went longer on the softs, they'll be able to extract something special. And Kunal, the track also gets rubbered in. It gets faster, more and more laps, lighter fuel loads. If they want, McLaren can really run away with it. They control it all, genuinely.
But on a track where there's no degradation, so to say, especially like I said on the C4, etc., I get a feeling they will not be able to run away with it. I don't think their advantage is as strong as what they had in Miami, which was down to circuit characteristics, was down to track temperatures, and so on. I think Ferrari is genuinely quicker. We will address in the next few minutes why Ferrari is suddenly finding themselves to be quick. Have they built a Monaco specific race car or not? We'll get to that. But this whole thing about tire strategy tomorrow, I really hope it doesn't become safety car strategy, because
Yeah.
is essentially, if the safety car's out, then you can very well say stop 3 times, but it won't make a difference. So the idea is, for this to work, needs to have a completely open race with zero interruptions, at least in my mind. But yeah, that's where I think it's going to go. Should we change tack and then applaud Lando Norris for what he did in qualifying?
We should, but I'm thinking for tomorrow, tires. I think that still is going to be the big word. Because at Monaco, we've seen this year, firstly, the fastest Formula One cars ever around Monaco. In fact, fastest ever Grand Prix cars, because Monaco has been around for longer than Formula One. This is Lando Norris breaking the qualifying track record of this place. And in spite of that, Kunal, the gap, barely anything. Isaac Hadjar, 2/10 of Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen, 5/10 off the grid. Isaac Hadjar, 7/10 of pole. I remember Bortoletto got knocked out only by less than a tenth or something. And
0.022.
exactly. And I had one more crazy stat, which was that Norris has set the first sub 70-second lap over here. It's crazy how close things have been.
Yes, I think hats off to these cars, qualifying masterpieces. Let's see how the races go tomorrow. But we must commend what these cars are, how quick they go on the narrow confines of a racing circuit, and even more, commend the drivers for being able to put such wide, I don't know, fat being the word, heavy being the word.
They are.
Yeah, and not so agile cars as well. I mean, these are like people say, around slow corners, Mickey Mousey, like lazy, old trucks that take time
But
to change direction. That's what drivers usually say that.
I'd like to add into this though. This is where Monaco is different because in this qualifying session, if you watch the cars, you could tell how each one of them was so different in their behavior. Because Monaco is technical and it exposes these things, it showcases how each car performs in different circumstances. So, for instance, the McLaren and the Red Bull were great up the hill. The Ferrari was quite good around the Mirabeau section. McLaren got pretty fast over there as well later on. And around La Rascas, Lando Norris gained majority of his time. I think around a 10th or something on Leclerc. Around corner 17, 18, 19, which is La Rascas and Anthony Notes. That bravery around the swimming pool. So it's fascinating how these micro battles are going on. And
go on.
yeah, it's part of a million bespoke parts on this car, on these cars. Still, they're so close.
Yes. And interestingly, here's the fun part. Okay, and I have the telemetry data open here. Comparison of Leclerc versus Lando Norris. Okay, the gap was 0.109, which is a tenth of a second, which is nothing. Sector 1, Leclerc was slower by 700s, so he was plus 0.074.
Yeah.
Sector 2, Leclerc was quicker by 0.074. So when they entered sector 3, they were a level on lap time. Okay. And in sector 3, Lando Norris pulled out that 1/10 of a second. In fact, if we were to literally break it down even more so, if you look at the telemetry, like you were saying, the last couple of corners is where Charles Leclerc actually lost that pole position. Yes, he topped all the free practice sessions. Yes, he topped everything that was there to top, but Lando just hammered it out there. And very interestingly, again, and you guys know this by now, but I sit on the driver radio channels, and I'm going to read out something that his race engineer actually said to him. And he didn't say it once, Soumil. He repeated it so many times that I'm like, is there a radio transmission issue? Am I not listening? Or what is it? So what did he say actually? He said, Lando, remember our key objectives. Okay, and I'm literally reading it out. Number 1 is line. That's the racing line. Number 2 is throttle. And number 3 is brakes. So they were working together on how are they going to extract their lap time, their performance from the car in Q3. And I absolutely loved how some of the best drivers in the world, even they need to be reminded, to be told, this is our key objective. That's what we need to do. And Norris, who's, been ever vocal, ever honest about everything, he actually said, that it's the first time since Australia that I've probably put everything together. And then he said, it's not that I'm driving quicker, I'm driving better. Okay. And such interesting nuances about driver philosophies of how they feel comfortable in the car and so on at play. And I love to see Norris challenge Piastri. I love to see Piastri being challenged. I love the fact that Charles has sneaked himself in there as well, which is what we've seen typically, right? At the races in qualifying, either Russell or Verstappen usually end up sneaking their way in as well. So anyway, congratulations, Lando Norris. Do you think they're going to use team orders to help Lando win? Honest, come on. He was asked this question in the press conference.
Oh, that's what. It's so hard to tell because if hypothetically there's a safety car early on and something or the other happens and someone bites, so many consequences. I think if need be, McLaren will really consider it, but I don't think they will do it. Like it goes against what they stand for. It's an ethical thing for McLaren. I don't think they'll do it. But kudos to their engineering team and the way they've worked with Lando. That is great driving. You need to do that. And drivers need to be told about how to get the maximum out. And we saw this very early on in FP3 as well. that the key to qualifying in Monaco, and hence the entire race weekend, was going to be warm up, because tyres were taking time to get to their best lap time. So who could get the maximum out of them? McLaren were confident in their approach, and the outcome is right in front of our eyes. And by the way, if Piastri stays third, if we do have Leclerc in second, and if we do have Lando first, the gap between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri will only be 3 points. That opens up the championship.
And that's what we want, right? We want a close battle. I mean, yes, we want our favorite drivers to win, etc., etc. But essentially, what we all tune into Formula One for is that we get our favorite battles. But we've spoken about Lando. We've spoken about Leclerc as well. Who was your standout performer, Soumil?
Oh, Isaac Hadjar, P5. For sure. I mean, I think I've stolen one out of your list, haven't I?
I would say, yeah, maybe Isaac Hadjar. I would, in fact, even say Liam Lawson. I would say even Fernando Alonso. Again, they used that medium tire like they did in Imola to try and get their performance up there as well, and sneak it into qualifying, which I think is fantastic. And I loved Fernando's expression, ha ha ha, I'm going to park it. I can't go any quicker than this. And imagine he's been doing this, time and time again. And since you mentioned Isaac Hadjar, let's remember he was hitting everything he could hit in the free practices, and for him to still put it to P6 was pretty fantastic. Now. P5 now with Lewis Hamilton, and he was just 2.5 tenths off Max Verstappen.
Yeah, exactly. And the gap between Isaac Hadjar and Fernando Alonso, 1,000th. Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso could have been P5 for the first time since 2023, and they missed out by 1,000th by a rookie. Look at this. Two guys on the opposite ends of their Formula One career vying for the same spot in such different teams. One that Fernando's actually driven for at the very start of his Formula One career, if you come to think about it. And the gap between them is just 1,000th. This is Formula One, Kunal. This is what we fall in love with for. Oh, yes. Wow.
And there were 5 cars in the battle for pole. There were the 2 McLarens, the 2 Ferraris, I would call it that. And there was Max Verstappen, right? And in this qualifying, in fact, Soumil, there were 5 drivers who got their best result in qualifying in the season. So George Russell, who of course had the power issue, had the Flintstone moment where he was pushed. He said, you know what I really regret? Not being able to participate in the best qualifying session of the season. Yeah. Can you imagine? So the best qualifying session of the season, if we were to call it that, gave 5 drivers their best qualifying result of 2025. Okay, I'm going to read it out. Leclerc, second best. Hamilton, fourth, the best starting result or the best qualifying result he had with Ferrari. Then Isaac Hadjar, sixth best. Again, I'm not putting penalties and whatever in place, but I'm talking a qualifying result. Fernando Alonso, second Q3. Esteban Ocon, best qualifying in 8th place. Liam Lawson, best qualifying in 9th place. Alexander Albon, Shah Hextall Smith was, of course, on our podcast, his manager, telling us how Alex has, changed nothing to beat Carlos Sainz. He broke Carlos Sainz's 4 race streak of, out qualifying Albon. So Albon was 10th. And to me, Soumil, Williams, Albon, and Sainz, all 3 together, were the underperformers of this qualifying session. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say they really underperformed. They could have been higher, but you could see their car is very understeery. So it's a very interesting observation I had after watching the McLaren, the Mercedes, and the Williams. They all kind of operate on a very similar platform. They're very proactive, very stable, very aero-dependent. When you look at Ferrari, the car rolls around, and same with Haas as well. It rolls over the corners. It's kind of a momentum, mechanical grip kind of car that way. And Williams, they did have some elements of it in the high speed, but then they were understeering a lot. So maybe that's one of the things. The other teams could have benefited big time from that.
So very interestingly, Williams actually was the other team that did the soft and the medium splits and so on. And the drivers wanted the medium tire. Carlos Sainz was very, very specific. I want the medium. And then the team actually was telling them, I think you need to go to the soft. And then finally the drivers heard and got to the soft at the end of Q2. And then guess what happened? Carlos Sainz, your favorite driver, he just didn't have any confidence on the soft. He lost car balance. And that's what we talk of momentum, because they were switching between compounds. Okay, and of course, this is a new car, new environment, new all of that. They were switching between compounds. He was not comfortable on that C6. So that's what happened with Carlos Sainz. With Albon, had he put his Q2 time in Q3, he would have been sixth on the grid.
Wow.
Okay. And what happened with Albon? His tires just went out of the window in Q3. So again, that whole preparation that the C6 needed just didn't happen. Liam Lawson, who's of course ninth and 1/10 off Esteban Ocon, or just about 2/10 off, he actually said that I just couldn't get the tires in. I ready for the start of the lap. In the first couple of corners, he was just all over the place, just not ready with the tires. So I actually love these tires for what they are, Soumil. They are so robust. And what you said of the McLarens, their run plan was phenomenal. Couple of races ago, Red Bull did that with Max Verstappen. In a shorter Q3, they actually fueled him more and they went
Yeah.
push, cool, push. With the McLarens, they actually did the push, cool, push in the final run of Q3 as well. So they were running more fuel when their second attempt came in Q3, and they were actually discussing this with the drivers as well on the radio. Are we doing it? Are we not doing? And Oscar kept asking, do I do a push, cool, push, or a push, cool, push? And they're very interesting conversations
Yeah.
that were going on. And I loved how Lando Norris summed it up. He said, it's all risk and commitment. It's got nothing to do with car balance, or little to do with car balance on what matters around Monaco.
It does. It does. I think he's too shy to admit that it does matter, because it also matters how the driver is attuned to the car and the way it behaves, because you've also either got to mold your style to the car or just hope that you get a car that matches your style. And Lando was able to extract a lot from it. It reminded me a lot of Nico Rosberg from the past. Very dialed in, very controlled, risk taking when he needs to take a risk, when he realizes that, wow, this is a big moment, I have to smash it out of the park. And it came, as we discussed earlier, on the final couple of corners. That is bravery and confidence that's building up. And we saw this on the F1 TV coverage here in India, where Alex Brundle was standing there the whole day and he was saying, Lando's the only one who's just pushing the limit consistently. And he's managing the curves very well, not jumping too high, committing to it and practicing something. And that's exactly what worked out for him at the end.
And, I love that McLaren have actually built a car that works on all circuits. When we remember when Red Bull had a dominating car, they literally forgot, or they just put Monaco and Singapore as outliers. And that's what happened to Max Verstappen. When he was asked what happened, he said, low speed rotation, riding the curbs. Remember, those were always our problems. Well, our problems continue. And, this sort of circuit just exposes our weaknesses. And what a lovely season. What else did we see? In Q2, there was a double elimination for Mercedes. Second race in succession. They've had a power unit issue, Soumil. Strange, right?
And that too, with the 2026 regulations coming, could it be a sign? It's unlikely, right? Different departments, reliability and maintenance probably would be something else. New power unit developments, totally different team. Sure, common synergies, but I'm not sure they're responsible. But the timing is very interesting, we've got to admit.
Yeah, and so everyone, just a refresher. Andrea Kimi Antonelli, of course, had a retirement in. It was a throttle issue, if I remember. I can't remember. In Imola, his home race.
Yeah.
George Russell had an electrical issue, especially in that damn tunnel, which is one place where nothing should ever give up. But it just so happened there, and there was that Marshall's Flintstone moment with Russell. They pushed him down, and whatever. But double elimination for Mercedes will start lower down. Could they be doing something absolutely ridiculous? Put on the soft, do a lap, stay on the medium, go as long as they need to, because there is also a risk, right? Because if you keep going long, Soumil, the risk is if there is a race suspension, you'll be given 30-second time penalty.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if somebody who would be happy to take a time penalty but not pit would be the likes of I don't know, Red Bull. They'll just tell Max, go put qualifying laps there, and then he'll just pull a 30-second lap, whatever gap on everyone because he chose to pit just once, and he's screw it, I don't need a pit. I'll just drive
Yeah.
really fast. That could also be right. That could also be a part of the strategy. But yeah, so Mercedes was there. Antonelli took blame for that mistake early days. And it's been a tough triple header already for him with
He
Imola.
seemed so sorry.
Yeah.
Like it's like the whole world and all of the weight was riding on his shoulders.
Yeah.
I found that to be very interesting.
I did. And then what else did we have in Q1? I'm just seeing my notes. We had a double Alpine exit. So Colapinto couldn't get the C6 to work, which is understandable. Early days again. Gasly had his third Q1 exit. And isn't it straight? It's either Pierre Gasly's all the way up in Q3, and you're like, oh, wow, look, Alpine is doing well, or he's out in Q1. There's hardly any Q2. It's like extremes in his qualifying
Yeah.
performances.
What was it that Alpine was saying at their launch? Rise higher. Well, they're trying to gamble their way to higher places because some days it works, the other days they're falling flat on their face. And today was one of those gambles. And if you're Flavio Briatore and if you live in his world and his understanding of motor racing and how cutthroat he is towards things, it makes sense. It doesn't matter. Like with 2025, literally does not matter for Alpine. He said that the second driver does not matter, which basically tells you they're going to be willing to experiment as much as they want because, in context, all that matters is next year and what comes up. So it was only natural they tried the mediums. And initially, lots of teams were staying away, Kunal. I think that's just respecting how close qualifying is in Monaco. But when they had their first runs in Q2, they tried. So it's clear that there is merit in the mediums. And we will see this also tomorrow. As the stints go longer, the cars will get faster.
Yeah. And one driver I'm really looking forward to sort of settle in, go faster. Lewis seems far more comfortable in the Ferrari here than
Yeah.
in any other races. But why don't we answer? Why is the Ferrari suddenly looking quicker? And Charles Leclerc actually gave a hint into that. He said Monaco is all about the slow speed stuff. So we don't have to compromise our setup for the high speed stuff to be quick in the high speed. So this is the Ferrari that gets to run without compromises. And when they do that, this is the kind of car that they have. So if and when, actually not if when Ferrari brings a fix for their ride height issues, which will let them run the floor lower later on and sort of lets them not needing to compromise the high speed more. I guess this is where we could end up seeing the Ferrari in the fight because that's what we want. Interestingly, Ferrari already, Soumil, in Q1, Charles Leclerc used just one set of softs, which allowed him to actually have an extra set of soft in Q3, which Lewis Hamilton actually pointed, saying, I wish I had that extra set of soft. The team actually brought me into Q1 and gave me an extra set of soft as well. So tire allocations, of course, are
I
extremely...
mean, he's the Prince of Monaco. He he doesn't need that extra set of stops. He will glide his way through. And I think that's confidence from the team that you earn over the weekend, which is why people need to be reminded it's not a boring race. It might be a boring 2 hours on Sunday, but the build up to the weekend also defines so much. And these micro decisions tell you such a story too. That's what Monaco is all about. And
Yeah.
we saw this here. Leclerc's the prince for a reason. He was outperforming everyone.
Yeah, and then my final banter point for the evening is race control actually give us a big hint on which team are they a fan of. Of course, this is a banter point. Please remember, don't make news out of this. Q2 will resume at 16:44 local time. That's what they said, and I said, is this a hint that there's a Ferrari pole incoming?
Yeah. Wow. It nearly was there. Nearly. But we
Yeah.
should check for predictions for tomorrow. Let us know what you think, folks. We'd love to see your predictions and speak to us on chat. Have a word with us. Share your thoughts, opinions, what you feel, your questions. And it's always more fun that way. And we've noticed that all of you guys do tend to watch till the very end, but very few of you subscribe. So for all of you who do, thank you very much. We're very grateful for the fact that you're showcasing your love for our content. And for those who haven't, just consider subscribing. It'll be a ton of fun, this journey with all of us. But who is taking you to the very top of your wrist game in Monaco? Like, if you are in the casino, if you have to put your money on someone, who's taking your money on the roulette?
You know, I think team orders will come into play, especially for the likes of Ferrari and whatever. Because what do we mean by team orders? Basically, you slow the pack, so your teammate who's ahead of you gets to create a gap and then pit into that gap. So you're if essentially blocking off all the rivals, which is what we've seen several times before. Interestingly, when Lando Norris was asked, will team orders, or rather Oscar Piastri, I love this, media sessions. Oscar Piastri was asked, what would you react to team orders? How would you react to team orders if you were, told to help your teammate win? And Oscar was puzzled for once, and he said, "Well, you know what? I would also want to win." Sarika's here. She's saying Alex Albon all the way. Go, go back a few minutes so you know how Albon should have been P6, but actually ended up P10. But anyway, so Charles Leclerc was then, joking that, or Lando Norris was joking that Leclerc is going to help Lewis Hamilton win. And there was this laughter in the press conference. I get a feeling, Soumil, Oscar Piastri, like he said, I've hit more things this weekend than I have in my whole career. He's probably going to hit that lucky patch. He's got the luck riding with him as well. He's always been there, and been there banking in those points or whatever we call. I think it's going to be Oscar Piastri getting that race win. Lando Norris is going to be probably just the third step of the podium, and it's all not down to pace, not down to degradation, not down to car package. It's going to be just down to luck.
And there's going to be 2 times. In fact, let's list it down. I think a minimum of 3 critical moments in this race: the start, the first pit stop, the second pit stop, plus any safety cars and red flags or anything of that sort too, or even VSCs for that matter, can neutralize things. Because if there's a break in concentration, can you warm your tires back up to put in those qualifying laps? Can someone catch you out in that period by overcutting or undercutting you? It's all a possibility. Monaco is going to be a marathon where you wait, and then at any given point in time, you've been called upon to put in a qualifying lap. It's the perfect test of the mental and technical side of a Formula One driver, Kunal. Like, even qualifying, think about the build-up. You do 2 runs or 3 runs in Q1, 3 runs in Q2, 6, and then you have to do 3 perfect runs in Q3 because anything could go wrong. So it's build up to the lap that then ultimately decides whether you're going to win the race or not. It's so good. It's so good.
Watch out for it. I think it's going to be Oscar Piastri. Maybe starting from pole position is probably not a good thing in Monaco with this 2-stop rule, I guess. But, you never know.
You never know. Well, I'm banking on Lando Norris, but I'm not too sure about a 1-2. We will see about that. Maybe Leclerc has something special to prove. But this has been a great episode. This has been our first proper race preview, quali recap kind of episode in a while. And this is fun. We had to do it for Monaco. And if you liked it, please comment if we should do this more often, like for all the races as well. Because if there's a following for it, we'd love to do it. And let us know, when after the race are you most likely to consume it? Is it immediately after qualifying? Is it a couple of hours, 3 hours? That way we'll be able to bring the show to you when you want to watch it. And it'll be a lot more fun. But see you after the race tomorrow. Subscribe to the Inside Line F1 podcast and enjoy Monaco for what it's going to be.